You guys, I'm going to this beautiful little church out in the country, like way out in the country. It's a tabernacle gospel church this Sunday. And I had gone last Sunday, and God really showed me something about myself. And I thought that I would share it with you because I think it's an important message. So a few years ago, I used to go to a little tiny church, and there was only 7 of us as the congregation, and it was led by an elderly couple, and they did amazing sermons. But without communicating this, I felt a little slighted because I felt like there wasn't any fellowship at the end of the service, and I really wanted friendship. I felt slighted because I wanted to share things and I wanted to share testimonials, and I never got the opportunity. But that was partly upon myself for not expressing that that was an important need and that I would like to have that. So I began to feel hurt about it. And when you feel hurt, you feel some anger and resentment, right? Well, one Sunday, the pastor was up on, the front of the church, and he had asked, is there anybody here that would like prayers? And a couple people asked for prayers for healing for themselves and for others. And I had asked for a prayer for our nation in protection from the evil that could come through artificial intelligence, AI. And nobody looked at me. There was no prayer. He just walked off the podium without acknowledging me, and then nobody spoke to me or looked at me after, and I was humiliated. I was really hurt. So I didn't come back, and I thought about that church quite a few times over the next 2 or 3 years, and I missed it, but I never went back. And I later sent them a text message asking them about how they felt about artificial intelligence, AI, affecting our world now, and reminded them that they didn't give me a prayer when I had requested prayer inside the church. And they said, oh, we had to close the church. And I thought, oh, I didn't know if maybe someone had passed away or if maybe they just didn't have a large enough congregation. Well, was it the very next Sunday? It was either the next Sunday or the Sunday after that when I was contemplating finding a new church because I hadn't been in the area for a while. I chose the Tabernacle Gospel Church, and I went out there this last Sunday. And lo and behold, who was sitting right in front of me in the pew over to my left was the pastor and his wife as congregation members of the Tabernacle Church. And they were pretty shocked to see me. And I was pretty shocked to see them too. But we talked to each other a little bit, and I was polite, and then I realized something. I watched their behaviors through the sermon, and I watched Eva, Pastor Dan's wife, try to be a part of the teachings of the sermon from the pew, and I saw a couple of the members of the congregation with disdain on their faces, like she shouldn't be sharing anything. And there was a silence, there was no appreciation. And Pastor Dan was very silent through the whole service. He kind of hung his head. And Eva, Pastor Dan's wife, said to me, oh, we had to close the church because the owners of the church sold it. And then as I was leaving, I kind of greeted them again and said, "Oh, it's very nice to see you." And then Pastor Dan said to me, "It was so sad. We had to close our church. It was so hard on us." And then the pastor of the Tabernacle Gospel came over and started to talk to Pastor Dan in front of me. And I told him, I said, Pastor Dan writes amazing sermons. You should really ask him to speak sometimes, because I really miss his sermons. They are fantastic. And Eva hung her head, and Pastor Dan looked a little surprised and was kind of silent and sort of hung his head as well. I feel compassion and sadness for Pastor Dan and Eva. I know that church and them being able to do sermons every Sunday was their life. They lived for that. And now they aren't able to do that. They're kind of in a position that I was in a way, when I went to their church, but worse. I also realized that God taught them a lesson that day. And I think we all three of us realized it that day, if not there in the church afterwards. Because in reflection, they were put into my position, but in a much harder, sadder way, I think. And I realized that I need to be more forgiving. I need to forgive. If I can't forgive others when I get hurt and angry, then how am I supposed to be forgiven for when I make others hurt and angry, or do something that perhaps hurts the Lord of heaven in some way, right? So I thought I would share that story with you guys, because I think it's important. Do we forgive others as we would want to be forgiven ourselves? Do we? Or do we hold on to that hurt and that anger and that disappointment? It's really something to think about, right? Really something important to think about. Is there someone in your life that you need to speak with and forgive? If so, maybe this is a message for you. And on a happier note, I guess that's a happy note actually, learning lessons from God, right? We're going to do some cooking, and I am going to show you how to make vegan sloppy joes, which is amazing because it really helps your digestive system, and it's so full of such good nutrients and good foods. So let's get cooking. good. It's so easy to appreciate God when you are looking at His creations everywhere, like the trees, the skies, the water, the crickets singing.